evening. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Ishan. Tonight, we focus on neighboring Myanmar because history has been created over there. After decades of military rule, the country is witnessing a transformation into a democracy. Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy has won a landslide victory in the country's general elections. But this means a huge transition of power, which creates a lot of questions about the future of the country, its powerful army and its newly elected government. Questions about how each would function and their roles in defining a future vision for Myanmar. And joining me tonight to help answer these questions are Ambassador Rajiv Sikri, Mohan Guruswamy, the senior economist, Bharat Bhushan, the editor of Catch News, is here with us, and Alok Bansal, director of the India Foundation, joins us live from the national capital. Bharat, I'll start with you. As far as Myanmar is concerned, this is one of those watershed moments in terms of a transition to a proper democracy, isn't it, for the country?
Oh, absolutely. They boycotted the 2010 election, but it was clear in 2012 when they won, National League for Democracy won 43 out of 45 seats, that they were on a roll. And this time, Aung San Suu Kyi's party, the National League for Democracy, is already leading in 90% of the seats. So, in a sense, it's a transition, but it's the beginning of a transition, because Myanmar has what the generals call a disciplined democracy, where 25% of the seats in all assemblies, the upper house, the lower house and the state assemblies, are reserved for serving army officers who also have a veto over constitutional change. So it's the beginning of a process, not the end of it.
Can this process happen? Because in 1990, I believe in 1988 to 1990, when the last elections happened, the army did not accept that verdict, and the transition was never allowed to happen. We're in 2015 now. The situation has changed, Ambassador Sikri, but can that happen again? Can a repeat of that happen again?
I think both sides need to be a little careful, and I'm encouraged by the moves by the military to have welcomed the results and having a dialogue with Aung San Suu Kyi. That is good. But what is a little bothersome is, I think, the somewhat extremist statements that Aung San Suu Kyi herself has been making, that I will be above the president. Now, you don't want to start off a democratic process by saying that I'm going to be an extra constitutional source of power. And that may put up the backs of the military. So I think she has to be a little careful in this regard. Democracy, as we know in India, is a process of give and take, of compromise. So unless both sides are willing to compromise and not step too far out of line so that the other side does not feel threatened, without that, the boat could become a little rocky. So I would urge caution. It is there certainly, as Bharat has said, a very great room for optimism. I think we should welcome what has happened, but this is only the first step, and the process of working out a stable, mutually acceptable arrangement will be a long and arduous process.
All right, Mohan Guruswamy, as far as the mandate itself is concerned, let's try to understand that from the Myanmarese people's perspective. I mean, I'm sure we haven't had that much interaction with them, but just as a cursory glance, it seems that the people desperately want change, and this is what the kind of a verdict that we are seeing shows.
Certainly, it's a mandate for change, but this mandate has been given before also in 1990, and sometimes in such societies where the military plays an extraordinary role in the politics, these mandates can be overturned very easily. It's happened world over. It's happened in Algeria, for instance. It's happened in Burma itself. It's happened in Pakistan. So it's not something new. So we'll have to watch and see. I think what Ambassador Sikri referred to is a disquieting signal that it could touch off a certain stridency. So one has to be very careful here.
All right, Alok, Bansal, coming to you. The interesting point is that Aung San Suu Kyi is also not the same personality, perhaps, that she was in the 90s when she was conferred with that Nobel Peace Prize, also of that long protest that she held to get democracy back into the country. But now it seems that there is a little bit of a change that has happened, and the compromises are something that she seems to be okay with, but that extra constitutional authority that Ambassador Sikri was pointing out is a worry, isn't it?
Yeah, this extra constitutional authority may be a reason for concern, But more significantly, I think in the initial period, she needs to avoid confrontation, direct confrontation with the military, which not only has 25% of the seats, but also has 3 key ministries and a committed budget for these ministries. Now with this sort of provisions, the transition to democracy would at best be very, very rudimentary, and in this initial period, she should actually go for an incremental changes rather than revolutionary changes. What is important is that her party has swept through. According to unofficial results, 82% of the seats are likely to go to her when all results are announced.
Right.
And what is significant is that she has made significant breakthrough into provinces dominated by minorities like in Chin province, etc. Her party has won a large number of seats. As far as military negating the elections is concerned, I think the chances are low, because now Myanmar is quite different from 1990s when it was a closed society. Today it is under media glare of the international media houses. The international community is engaged with Myanmar. Moreover, military junta has got used to the advantages of being a component of the global community.
Right.
There is large scale investment which is coming into Myanmar, and the people are realizing the advantages of being in the mainstream. So at this juncture to negate it may be little difficult, but I think a little bit of compromise from both sides are expected. And as of now, the military has said that they have welcomed and they have accepted that their party has lost out as far as the party president is concerned, or the USDP is concerned. So I think there is a prospect. I think both of them should need to tread carefully, and things will work out.
All right, everybody needs to tread carefully, but Bharat, what happens often with people who've been part of a revolution, so to say, in terms of Aung San Suu Kyi, the revolution to bring in democracy back into Myanmar, it often happens that you still remain a street fighter, and as far as governance is concerned, it could become an issue that could set her almost on a collision course with the army. And given this kind of already the constitution, how it's tilted towards the army and guaranteeing their power, is this a confrontation that's inevitable?
I don't think so. I think we should also not make much of her saying that she'll be above the president. She'll be above the president only if the new president is from the National League for Democracy. Now consider a compromise where the current president, Thein Sein, continues for another 2 years, and she gains time to change the constitution, and maybe then she contests 2 years later. So all kinds of compromises are possible, but there are basic challenges before her which will not be solved through confrontation. They'll be solved essentially through negotiation, through parliamentary processes. One, of course, giving a 25% block to the army basically means giving the army a say in politics, giving it veto power over constitution making. All that will have to go. There are 3 ministries which are appointed by the army chief, that is Defence, Home and Border Affairs. They have to come under civilian control. Fourth, the constitution bans anybody who has been married to a foreigner in the past or is currently married from contesting, which means Aung San Suu Kyi herself. That would need to be changed. And fifth, she will have to have a policy for the Rohingyas, who are displaced and have actually been disenfranchised in this election, which is otherwise being called free and fair.
Absolutely.
They have voted in the past.
And there are 800,000 of them, if I
and this time they have not been allowed to vote. So these are complex issues. Confrontation will not help you tackle these issues. Compromise will.
All right, compromise might, and the fact that it's all about the economy is often what is said that brings in change, and one is that what we are witnessing over here, that the global powers also see Myanmar as an opportunity in terms of just the strategic location or just in terms of just a market.
Well, I think the United States' main interest was to get it away from Chinese orbit, which is succeeding. One shouldn't read beyond that very much. The country which is in great difficulties, I think last count there were 16 civil wars going on. And there's a problem between the Burmans and each one of the ethnic groups. So, to sort that out, the role of the army then becomes very critical in that country. So you can't even get into the army and think that, you have no role to play. Because everything depends on the army, on how much control you can exercise over the provinces. As far as the economy is concerned, the country is rich in raw materials. It's got timber, it's got, minerals and, diamonds.
Oil and gas.
Oil and gas. And, we're already there to some extent. India and China, got beachheads at Sittwe. where we will have a pipeline going, the Chinese will have a pipeline to Kunming, we will have a pipeline coming into Calcutta. So all that is there. Both the two countries are already there. The Americans are now coming in, so it will become a cockpit of the two regional powers and an across the ocean power, which is going to come into Myanmar in a big way. So I think the engagement between these three powers will be quite interesting to watch in the next few decades.
Absolutely, and that could really define as far as the geopolitics of that particular region is concerned. Ambassador Sikri, what Guruswamy is pointing out to about the 16 civil wars that are on inside Myanmar. There are various ethnic groups, as Bharat pointed out. Rohingya Muslims find no representation in what is called the free and fair election in Myanmar's history. So the challenges before Aung San Suu Kyi are tremendous, and who does she really represent? Is it just the mainstream majority that could face a lot of sectarian violence, and therefore the army could play a stronger role?
That's a very good question, because traditionally Aung San Suu Kyi's approach has been that of a Burman, the majority community, and she has been somewhat neglectful of the ethnic minorities. Now, if, as the reports are indicating, her party has received support from the ethnic minorities also, then there is a responsibility on her to take care of their interests. And here I would like to draw a parallel with Nepal, where after a long period, democracy emerged, but the minorities, whether it was the Janjatis or the Madeshis, felt that they had got nothing out of the constitution, and therefore you have a problem. Now, Myanmar should not be faced with a similar situation where you have a democratic regime, but the minorities, be it the Rohingyas, be it the ethnic minorities, feel that where are they going to be? So therefore, there has to be an inclusive approach here. The second point I'd like to make is that from an Indian perspective, we should be concerned about security in the first instance, because its borders are northeast. And the part of Myanmar that borders the northeast is also very undeveloped, and pretty much out of the control of the central government. Certainly, maybe the army has control, and even the army is a bit flaky there. So we need to focus on these areas, because our security depends on what happens west of the Irrawaddy.
Right.
So I would suggest that our attention should be focused here, because there is the overall economic development of Myanmar, which is fine, and we should be involved in it, and we are involved in it. But special attention has to be given to this part, and I think that our connectivity projects, our infrastructure projects should be here, so that our essential interests, be it encountering militants, extremists, drug trafficking, all kinds of problems that we have on the border, that these are taken care of.
All right, we'll talk about India's interest a little later, but coming back to Aung San Suu Kyi, Alok, Bansal, as the guests have pointed out over here, that Aung San Suu Kyi might be representing just the Burman's point of view, and is that good enough? Because that could lead to potentially to a lot of strife, and once again, as I put the question to Ambassador Sikri, this could mean that the army could tomorrow step in and say that the situation is going out of control and we need to move in. So as far as the election of this government and this transition to power is concerned, it's still weighed heavily in favor of the army.
See, Aung San Suu Kyi needs to treat carefully and have good negotiations with the army. As it was talked about inclusive democracy, we need to understand that when we talk of minorities in Myanmar's context, there are two types of minorities. One are ethnic minorities, which constitute a large number and control a large territory of Myanmar's territory. With most of these minority groups, Aung San Suu Kyi and NLD have had very good relations. In the past, in fact, even after 1990s, they had formed a coalition, and even today they have a very good relation, and as a result, we are seeing that the results are good. As far as the religious minorities are concerned and the recent violence between Buddhists and Muslims are concerned, Aung San Suu Kyi did raise concerns as far as the violence against Muslims in Mektela was concerned, and consequently her party has not done as well in that province. As far as Rohingyas are concerned, it's a very, very complex issue, because not only Burmese, but none of the major minority groups in Myanmar consider them as citizens. And as a result, Aung San Suu Kyi has preferred to remain silent, because that was probably a ruse by the military to instigate the Burmese voters against her. Now, As far as security is concerned, from India's point of view, it's critical. And we have been engaging the military junta for a very long time. We have had very good relations with the military. And in fact, recently when in Naypyidaw, the agreement was signed between the government and the rebel groups, Indian representatives were present. But so has been India's relations with Aung San Suu Kyi, who has spent a considerable period of her life in India in her childhood. She studied here, she has very good friends here. And I think India should be able to maintain very good relations. Because from India's point of view, presence of an inclusive government in Myanmar, which maintains stability and participative democracy, is very, very essential. Because for India's Act East policy to fructify, Myanmar is the crucial component. We are actually building the Kaladan multimodal projects. We are looking at More-Tamu Road and further. So Myanmar is crucial, and we would like to engage with Aung San Suu Kyi without in any way antagonizing the army at this juncture. And I think if Aung San Suu Kyi goes about clipping the wings of army gradually rather than drastically, I think it will work out. Maybe the number of seats that the army has in the parliament may initially be reduced from 25% to lesser number. Maybe the key ministries can be brought under her control, and then slowly we could erode their
gradual shift is what you were suggesting. But Bharat, talking about India and talking about Myanmar's strategic importance, because Myanmar itself, it shares a border with China, it shares a border with India. The Americans are also trying to enter that, and that makes it for a very volatile cocktail of sorts as far as trying to influence the politics of that particular country is concerned. How do you see that playing out?
May I first say something about the ethnic minorities then? This issue is not the creation of the current regime. It has existed pre-independence. There was an agreement called the Panglong Agreement, which Aung San Suu Kyi's father came to with the Karens, the Kachins and the Shans. It was not written in the constitution, but he said when the constitution is written, you will be given considerable amount of autonomy. The Karens and the Shans were to have the right to secede also, but he said we'll have a federal constitution and we will like to keep you with us, and federalism will ensure that you don't go out. And the Kachins were not given that right because they're spread over a large portion. Even since 2010, there's been an attempt to bring these people into ceasefire agreements. 11 ceasefire agreements have been signed, and they followed a four-pronged strategy. This is the military, which is a military strategy of first subduing them, a political strategy of dialogue, an economic strategy of regional development, and a social strategy of providing health, education and other facilities. So that effort has been going on. Aung San Suu Kyi has to take that forward, but also include the Rohingyas, because they are not Bengalis. They've been there for hundreds of years and they've enjoyed certain rights. So an inclusive government will itself make Myanmar secure and its neighbors secure. Once these insurgencies come under control, their relationship with insurgencies in India's northeast will also go down. Currently, you either pay them or they host you, or they give you routes to China. Weapons are now coming from the Iran-Burmese border, where rogue PLA elements apparently have set up arms factories, and these arms are coming not only to northeastern groups, but they are coming down to Naxalites in the heart of India. So these are the security considerations that are involved in terms of military. But please remember, we used to have fantastic links with Myanmar, and they've all gone down. There used to be daily flights, there used to be shipping links. But why did that happen? Did that happen because of India's policy towards Myanmar, or just the fact that Myanmar decided to shut its doors out? Well, Myanmar decided, it happened because of a military coup where a lot of Indians moved out. But even today, there are huge numbers of Indians. There are Biharis who do sugarcane farming there, there are Andhrites who went there for fishing, Tamilians, Chettiars who went for money lending, Orias who went to build railroads, Bengalis. You go to Yangon, you'll find, every street will have a Hindu temple. The Gujaratis, Surti Muslims are a big business community there. India has never opened a dialogue with these people, or looked after their problems, or raised those issues. A lot of them remain as non-citizens, purely on registration papers. So there is a diaspora there which needs to be leveraged. We are leveraging it in America, we are leveraging it elsewhere, but not in Burma. Absolutely. The engagement of that particular diaspora, is Mohan wanted to come in.
Yeah, but you see, look at the lack of interest in India on the big historic elections. None of our newspapers have a correspondent there. It doesn't even make page one news. as a major event taking place. So we've also suffered from this inward-looking mentality that, we are everybody out here, we don't really have to concern ourselves with these smaller countries. I think it's also reflected not only in their mentality but also in our mentality.
Well, she's covering it here.
So I'm surprised, because nobody else is having a discussion on this. But the important thing is that, this Chinese link there, the whole border which is soft there, and the Chinese are in effective control of large chunks of area where they've got industries. They have a lot of the heroin processing units and the amphetamine units are on the Chinese border with both PLA elements in it, and the arms factories. Is also the big clandestine Chinese activity out there, and this is something we should be extremely concerned about. The other thing is the tension between the Burmans and the ethnic minorities. Aung San has got a power base among the Burmans. The ethnic minorities which have supported her, ostensibly supported her this time, are expecting more freedoms, more autonomy, and that would go against the tendency among the majority Burmans. So we'll see how this is to be managed. And I think the army has got a very important role there. India has traditionally had a very good relationship with the Burmese army. Right. The Indian army and Burmese army worked together side by side for a very long time. And I think we should continue fostering that relationship.
All right, but as far as the relationship is concerned, it's often also about people-to-people interaction, and that, as Bharat was pointing out, has really gone down. Despite a large presence of an Indian diaspora there, the people-to-people contact is really not there as it was at one point in time, and that could be perhaps one of the keys to re-engaging with Myanmar. I mean, we've had the political engagement. We had 2 prime ministers going there in 2014.
Oh yes, certainly we should be doing everything to revive people-to-people links. I think the Buddhist connection is very strong. The only place from India from where there are direct flights to Myanmar is Gaya, because there are a lot of people who come. Now, there are plans to have road links, rail links. These need to be expedited, because if you can have large numbers of ordinary people coming to India, be it for pilgrimage or whatever, it will create a bond between the 2 countries and people that will be more enduring. One other point about the diaspora. I think let's not forget that the Indian diaspora went there when both Burma and India were under British rule.
Right.
And the Indians in Burma did not have the best of reputations because they were seen as the agents of the British Empire. So there is a certain baggage that we carry there. Also, we need to, I think, at the highest level, engage Myanmar a little more. And I would like to hope that the Prime Minister would pay a visit to Myanmar soon. He went there for the East Asia Summit last year, but a bilateral visit. And while there are factors that bring Aung San Suu Kyi closer to India, but she's also a bit disappointed with India, which she has expressed in various interviews.
Yes.
And as has been pointed out, we need to engage the military also, because it is with the military that we need to engage for our security interests. Thirdly, I would say that we should activate the sub-regional cooperation mechanisms like BIMSTEC, where Myanmar is a critical player, so that we integrate Myanmar economically with Northeast India and the rest of India. So it has to be a well thought out strategy covering security, economic and people-to-people contact.
All right, indeed, a big strategy is required to engage with Myanmar. Bharat, final word, we just have about 20 seconds.
I just want to say that the attitude of Burmese towards Indians has changed largely because of the Chinese. Because the Chinese have moved in from Ruili down to Mandalay. Mandalay, the 50% population is Mandarin speaking. Shop signs are in Mandarin and Burmese. 50,000 kids there go to 500 schools run by the Chinese, and I asked them, why are you learning Mandarin? They said, so that we can do business, we can get employment in Chinese shops. And people there say, why don't Indians come and do business here? We are the same people, we have similar values and shared religion and ties and so on and so forth. The other thing I wanted to say was, I agree 100% that we should improve our relationship with them, build links, etc. But often in this country, everything remains at the level of just talking. Okay. Now, I know Mohan has been on that Moreh-Mandalay road. It takes more than 24 hours from Moreh to Mandalay. Right. The distance is the same from Mandalay to Ruili. You take Asian Highway number 16 and you're there in 8 hours. That is, we've never walked the talk.
Okay, fair enough. We need to walk through our amount. We've run out of time. We want to say one line.
Yeah, I think we need to build a lot of expertise in the country. We lack that in this country.
All right. Well, that we'll have to wrap it up. Alok, Bansal, Bharat, Bhushan, Mohan, Guruswamy, and Ambassador Sikri, thank you very much for coming in. So as far as Myanmar is concerned, it's indeed a tightrope war for Aung San Suu Kyi as the country transitions into a full-fledged democracy. There are a lot of pitfalls along the way. We'll, of course, here at Rajya Sabha keep a track of that story for you. Thanks so much for watching for now.